Okay, so Simtrax is a global organization. We've been around for 25 years. We have over 4,000 customers now. We're headquartered in the U.S. in the Los Angeles area and in Europe in Nîmes. And there's also a Mumbai office with both sales marketing as well as technology. That's where a lot of our software development happens. All of our developers are on staff. There's no outsourcing here. Nîmes, Waldorf, and London are sales and marketing and operations offices, as are Boston and London. And each of these has their own support center. So effectively, any of our customers anywhere in the world has access to support off hours from their home location through our remote offices, which is very helpful to the global companies we deal with frequently. So as I said, we're going to start first around the improving the communication with the customer. There's the 5 Ps, the typical kind of consultant speak that we're sometimes guilty of here. But the point is to personalize the information so the recipient really feels it's aimed at them. And there's a lot around that, not just getting the name right, but also understanding from a bigger data standpoint more about that entity that you're talking to and trying to give them a customized experience. And that leads into professionalism, to give them the best experience with the communications that you're sending them. Polished, easy to use, easy to pay in the case of an invoice. That falls into perception, because really as you communicate with your customers, you're also expressing your brand to them. It's not just about your marketing and sales. Every time you communicate with the customer, certainly in the customer service arena, but also in the accounting side, you're going to be communicating what you guys are about. So you can use the invoice as an opportunity to, make that a good experience, or if you're not paying attention, a bad one. And then we're going to get into, really this is the second demo, how to optimize the process, how to more easily get people to pay more quickly, and that involves in the first bullet point here, just get the stuff out right away. A lot of companies batch invoices out. They, in a given day, week, have you, they'll fire off hundreds of invoices at once, because in the old days, that's how you did it. You ran a batch process at some interval, and all the things that occurred in that previous time frame go out at once. Today, with the level of connectivity that's possible and level of automation that's possible, there's no reason you can't get that invoice out immediately upon delivering a service or a product to your customer. On that topic, once you've done that, make sure that what you've sent is useful and easy to deal with. Make sure that if your customer requires a purchase order or some other kind of bill of lading, that you communicate that as well at the same time, so you're not having to get into a manual collection cycle. On the other side of the fence, you have the accounts receivable people that are going to be following up on unpaid invoice situations. Make it simple for them to correct small things on the invoice, such as the address, adding a purchase order, and make it really easy for them to resend the invoice as an email. On that subject, you may not want to do this from SAP. This webinar is really designed for SAP customers, but it can be less convenient to do this kind of work inside of SAP, and it also requires a dedicated license. And as some of our customers outsource the collections, and having an external portal to do this work outside of your 4 walls, outside of your infrastructure, can be useful. While you're doing that, make sure that you give them all the information they're going to need in the same place, so they can very easily resend stuff. And then upon sending the invoice, it's helpful if you understand whether your customer has received it. So a lot of games get played around this. People, when you do, I've been on both ends of this phone call as a small business person, both having received invoices I didn't want to pay and having sent invoices I wanted paid. The game can be, did you get the invoice? No, I didn't. So if there was technology, and in fact you're going to see some today, that tells you whether, when, and who opened the invoice, wouldn't that make things easier? And finally, if you do end up with problem customers, you would like to be able to flag them, keep an eye on them, and be sure that you're emphasizing collections around those people first. This is what we're going to show you, and this is a bit of an eye chart for me, but it all kind of makes sense. So the concept here is that somebody in the SAP world either creates an invoice or makes an adjustment to one. At that point in this workflow that I'm going to show you, Compleo is involved. That's one of our products. So the user initiates the request for the invoice to be sent. It goes through some Compleo processes to pull the information out of SAP via something called our RFC connector that is needed to assemble the invoice. Then that information is handed back to Compleo, which then passes it through a design tool to format the rough draft. The rough draft of the invoice goes optionally to a review stage. This is not required, but if you wanted to have some kind, or if you must have some internal process to ensure that the invoice is valid, correct, and approved, you can have a phase where that's verified. Once the reviewer verifies it, it goes to your customer, that's this line. It goes to SAP, that's this line. And it also goes to an external portal where you can track the progress towards payment of the invoice. So there's not too many slides, and you've already lived through most of them. What I want to do now is kind of pivot right to the first demo. And we're looking at a form. And you could change any one of these fields in order to achieve a revised invoice. But just for example, I'll change the quantity ordered on one of the, or both of the items. So we'll go ahead and we'll make a couple of changes here. And as soon as I save it, what happens behind the scenes is that the information is passed to supervisor. Oops, let me get that going here for you. So this is supervisor. This is our product now. So this process here is monitoring the user exit that was just passing the request for information, and it's already done. So what happened very quickly was when you save that change or save the invoice, the information to request all the stuff from SAP was done. SAP returned the information to Compleo. Compleo took that stuff, put it into a rough draft, and it sent that information via an alert, in this case via email, to the person in charge of managing, whether or not that invoice can be paid. So I'm going to go ahead now and show you that process here. This is our portal that would allow a reviewer, and this is all web-based. There's no software you need to have to make this work on the person's machine. And it can be behind the firewall. It can equally be outside your firewall. So I'm a reviewer, and now I've got some stuff in my basket. This is the new one that just came in. I can verify whether I'm happy with this. Anything from the amount to the PO, all these things I might have to check. I can reject it, in which case it goes back for review again. But if I click OK, then at that point, I've passed it off to the customer. Already by now, two things have happened, actually more than two, but the first two things to mention is that the customer has just received or will soon receive an email with the invoice. The other thing that can happen if you're in a manufacturing environment is you can generate more than one transaction at one time. So you could, for instance, send a pick list to the warehouse to assemble the materials. You could make a label for the box if you're shipping something physical. And all that stuff can be triggered off of this one action, if that's desirable. So I'm going to show you the back end here a bit. This isn't something that the users would be dealing with, but this is a module called Designer. And this is where you can literally go ahead and, on the fly, if you wish, change the format of the information that your customer receives. And this, I'm focusing on the invoice again. So I'll go ahead and pick on the marketing message, because one of the things you can do, as I mentioned with email or with a customer communication is you can not just bill them, but you can either use this kind of extra space on the paper to pitch a product, and this is where big data can come in. You can know from the stuff on the invoice whether it's a TV or whatever the trigger might be. You can customize an offer, and in the consumer world, the large companies do a really good job of this with consumers. You can get a very targeted offer based on your browsing history, quite frankly. Even if you don't get to that level, but you mine your own customer data for useful information about them, you can customize what might go here. It may be a marketing pitch. It may be a reminder to do something. This is all stuff that's relying on variable data here. So just to give you a sense of where this stuff comes from, in this case, it's a document, but this could be an SAP field as well. So this is what we're using for this barcode here. This is underlying data that's been supplied to us via the RFC connector from SAP. And it's all real-time stuff. Just to give you a quick, deeper dive into the back end here, I'm going to go ahead and look at one of the processes here that you can do. So this is our RFC connector. And here, this is a real-time connection. So if I'm in here now, I'm literally querying our SAP database. So if I just pick any of these, I can actually on the fly change the data source. This is all real-time stuff coming out of our SAP system. And this is our mechanism for moving it along the process. We grab some XML and we keep it, and then we send it to Designer to process into the output. Okay, that went deeper than many people want to go, but I wanted to sort of prove to everybody that that this all works, and it's not just stable, but actually relatively easy enough for a salesperson to do. So just briefly dipping back into PowerPoint, and not going to dwell on this slide, but I wanted to have sort of a pivot point from kind of that dive into document assembly and delivery to what happens once you've delivered the document. So the second half of this is going to be a demo on what happens after the demo. And we're going to deal with things like whether it's been paid, why it hasn't been paid, and then remedies for making the collection process simpler. So here we've got a portal. This is another Simtrax module called Star Query, and we've set this up to give you a sense, and I'll make sure that we haven't timed out here. So I'm going to refresh the data here, just make sure we're still logged in. And while that's happening, this information is being collected from either the accounting system, and that could be SAP, it could be some other system. This product doesn't care what the other data source is. In this case, we're pulling it from our own system, but this could be drawing it from everything from QuickBooks to SAP. So here we've got some high-level charts. So we're going to get into some more detail, but just to give you a sense of what we're looking at here, out of the 90 invoices produced in this period of time, let's say this is the first week of, or the last week of April, 45 have been opened. So this is real-time information on not just how many invoices were sent, but how many of them have been opened. And I'm going to show you how that works in a minute. This gauge gives you a progress. So out of the 45 invoices that have been opened, 22 of them are paid. And this is a quick view into your top offenders. Whoops, I'll have to log in here again, unfortunately. So let me go back in here. I'm sorry for that delay. Dashboards. So show you the real under the hood stuff here while we get back into that screen. So back to that same thing. It's just that simple. This is a view that could be of either the top invoices that are unpaid or whatever the data is meaningful to you. That could be by dollar value or by days late. it's a quick look of being able to just go from this engine into the open invoices in this case. Now we're going to pivot over to how you can deal with an unpaid invoice. So this is another view into Compleo, and this is, if you want to think of it as an account receivable portal. So here I've got in this view all the invoices that were from the past 7 days. Let me refresh this to make sure we haven't been logged out here, which we have. So we'll log back into that. And I'm going to go ahead and pick all the invoices sent in the last 7 days and all those that have not been clicked. So we have the ability with our technology not just to know whether an invoice was delivered, but we also know whether and by whom it was opened. So these are invoices we just sent right before this webinar. So here's one here that hasn't been opened. I'm going to take a look at this thing here. And what I'm going to do here in the demo is I'm going to resend it to somebody in my office, and they're going to pay it, or else. So I want to walk through the screen a bit first. So I have the ability to send it, which I'm going to do in a minute, but I also have the ability to void it by hitting on Publish, or if I want to create a new link, this is a unique link. It's called a GUID link. This is useful because it's undecipherable. So it's another level of security we can provide you for external emails. If I publish again, I get a different GUID link. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to resend this one to my customer here, who is sitting outside the door, hopefully. We're going to find out in a minute. And I would like him to pay, and let's pretend I'm on the phone with him now. So I'm going to send him this invoice, and we're going to pretend that I have phoned him at the same time, and we're going to further pretend that he has a credit card waiting for me. So I'm going to go ahead and make that comment. It's paid by credit card. And again, the flags aren't really important. Somehow, however your accounting system is set up, you flag that invoice as paid. So I've sent it easily. I've commented what happened. In this case, happily, he paid it. If he really did click on this, we'll be able to see that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the data. So we're looking now at 22 paid invoices and 45 opened invoices. We'll see whether any of this stuff changes here. We don't recommend you always refresh data. We only have a few thousand records in our database, so it's not that bad for us. But here you can see both. He has opened the invoice, or somebody has, and in fact, it's also just been paid. So that is all a perfect scenario. We have our money now. Everyone's happy. The dashboards reflect this change. All right, so really we're pretty close to the half hour, and just a couple more quick slides, and then we're going to get to any questions. Okay. So this is by way of recap. There's not really a lot more to say at this point, but I just want to remind everyone of the three areas that we think we can assist you with. First of all is the obvious one. Compleo Suite is a tool that's designed to optimize some of the very detailed programming that must happen in ASAP. So we do have a substantial benefit to offer in terms of time saved, developing, and deploying forms. And that time is in two places. It's in the development hours or days, and we say we can, with our tool, we can provide you like a 90% reduction in time spent on this kind of trivia. We also can deploy projects faster, so it can be equally valuable not just to save dollars, but to get a project out quicker. And I think we've got some tools in both of those areas. Moving on to what happens after the document goes, you have automatic through supervisor, instantaneous, and traceable document delivery. Again, this needn't only be invoices, but that's the example we're using today. You want to provide a superior experience. You want the publication to be well-designed, well-organized, with barcodes where they have to be, personalization using big data if you have access to that, and polished. And a lot of consumer companies have this right. Not every business is able to operate on the scale of an Amazon, for instance. So if to the extent possible, you want to make your stuff look as good as you can. And you want to use your customer data to not just know more about your customers, but to make the information you supply to them more relevant. And they're going to appreciate that. Even though I find it annoying when I click on a website and I get a banner ad from something I just browsed, and some part of me appreciates that experience because it's targeted to me, it's not irrelevant. And on the kind of the other side, just having a better tool to manage the invoice process, to provide high-level dashboards for senior people, working information to those that do the collection, quick access to all the open invoices in this case, an easy way to identify problems, a dashboard on late payers, for instance, being able to communicate that easily to people that must follow up. And part of that might be having a system outside of SAP to do all this, so you're not bogging down SAP with this, using up license capability, and for that matter, having to be logged in on your home network to do this stuff. So at this point, I'm going to unmute everybody, if I can do. If there are any questions